It's quite a story unfolding with Rudy Giuliani, isn't it? Once America's mayor, such a huge figure.
Absolutely. Republican politics close to Trump.
And now, well, reports are saying he can't even get his calls returned by the former president's team. It really makes you wonder, what's changed?
It certainly does. And that's pretty much what we're digging into today. We've been looking at these excerpts from a YouTube video transcript. It's from the Ring of Fire, the commentary show.
Right.
And they're dissecting Giuliani's recent claims, trying to figure out the dynamics. So our mission here is really to unpack their analysis, look at loyalty, usefulness, and maybe the consequences of these political ties.
Yeah, exactly. And these are, two massive figures in U.S. politics. So this whole situation gives us a fascinating window, doesn't it, into how things work.
For sure.
Okay, so let's dive in. The video analysis paints a pretty bleak picture for Giuliani right now. They argue pretty forcefully that his current troubles, legal stuff, money problems, it's mostly linked to his work for Donald Trump.
They really hammer that point home.
Yeah.
The speaker basically says, look, if he hadn't tied himself so closely to Trump, his situation, his legacy might look very different today.
More like a former mayor, maybe a presidential candidate.
Yeah, perhaps a more, straightforward legacy. It just shows how these alliances can really change everything for someone.
And the video zeroes in on that moment after Trump won in 2016. Giuliani apparently really wanted that attorney general job. And the analysis suggests that not getting it after being so visible was kind of a critical moment. Why do you think they focus on that specific ambition?
Well, it seems the speaker sees that as Giuliani sort of doubling down on his loyalty.
Yeah.
Maybe thinking it would pay off eventually,
Yeah.
with that job or something else big.
Right.
And when it didn't happen, well, the video suggests his next moves might have been about trying to stay relevant, stay in the inner circle, which according to them led straight to these countless lawsuits and legal messes they mention.
It highlights how maybe unfulfilled ambition inside that kind of tight political group can lead to, riskier choices.
It definitely seems to be their argument.
Which then leads us to this really head-scratching part. Giuliani actually complaining publicly that the Trump folks aren't calling him back, the very people he seemed to bend over backwards for.
Yeah, the irony's pretty thick there, isn't it?
What does making that public grievance even suggest about where he stands now?
It suggests a major shift. For someone who was clearly an insider to go public like that, it screams loss of influence, doesn't it?
Totally. Like the old channels are just closed.
Or at least not as open as they used to be. It signals something's really broken down in that relationship.
And he apparently had a specific reason for wanting these calls returned. The video says Giuliani wanted to talk to AG Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel. To tell them to stop going after Catholics. And even offer his own advice on what they should be doing instead. What was your take on that?
Well, that's where the video analysis gets really sharp. The speaker just flat out says, no, there's no evidence the FBI or DOJ under Trump were targeting Catholics.
So it makes you question Giuliani's motive there, right? Was it a real concern or something else?
Exactly. Was it genuine or maybe like a tactic? A way to try and get back in their good graces or seem important again? The video definitely leans towards skepticism.
It's pretty blunt. The speaker even throws in a personal angle, says they're a lapsed Catholic, family are practicing Catholics, saw nothing like that targeting.
Right. That personal bit does add some weight to their pushback, makes it feel more grounded.
It really does.
And they add that actually it seemed like people who didn't like Trump were more likely to be under scrutiny back then, which kind of undermines Giuliani's whole narrative.
Right. So, okay, with all that context, the video quotes Giuliani saying, I tried to reach them today. They didn't call me back. They say there's an explanation for it. It better be damn good. Sounds almost desperate.
A little bit, yeah. And the video's comeback is just brutal. Here it is, Rudy. You're not useful.
Wow.
Harsh, I know. But that's their core argument for why he's on the outs. What do you think about that idea? Just pure usefulness driving these political ties?
It's cynical, but the video elaborates, right? Saying his time of being valuable to Trump is just over. He's not an asset anymore. He's a liability.
That's the word they use. Tainted makes you really consider the transactional side of some of these relationships.
Absolutely. The speaker even goes so far as to suggest Trump has this, what they call a psychopathic trait, using people like tools, basically.
A means to an end, yeah. That's the phrasing.
And once that purpose is done, or if the person becomes a problem,
they dropped, discarded, It paints a picture of politics driven purely by self-interest, at least in that specific analysis.
And it's not just about Giuliani in their view. They broaden it out, saying his situation is basically a big flashing warning sign.
Yeah, a warning to pretty much everyone who worked closely with Trump. It's framed as a potential pattern, not just one guy's bad luck.
They name others too, don't they? Like Kenneth Cheesebro, Sidney Powell.
That's right. Cheesebro, Powell, the Eastmans, people who got deeply involved and then faced, serious negative outcomes, legal trouble, financial hits.
It suggests Giuliani isn't alone in this kind of trajectory, and for anyone listening, really does raise questions about the risks, right, of tying your whole career so tightly to one person.
Absolutely. They even look back at Trump's first term, point out how many loyalists ended up with massive legal problems, lawsuits, sanctions, disbarment.
It's a sobering list when they lay it out like that.
And what's also interesting is their point about the ones who didn't face legal issues. Many of them just kind of slunk away, is the phrase they use.
Like, eat it out.
Yeah, except maybe some who went into media, like former press secretaries. They use Ben Carson as an example of someone who was prominent and then just sort of vanished from that political scene.
It really makes you wonder about the shelf life of careers built just on loyalty to one leader.
Mm-hmm. And the video floats a theory about why some first-term loyalists didn't come back for more.
Not necessarily a political disagreement, but
maybe just seeing the writing on the wall, seeing what happened to others, the legal fees, the reputational damage, and deciding, no thanks, not worth the risk.
A pragmatic calculation, maybe?
Could be. So the speaker essentially holds up Giuliani's experience as this cautionary tale. The message being, your value is tied to your usefulness. When that's gone,
you could be abandoned. And maybe worse, left dealing with the fallout alone.
That's the stark takeaway from the analysis presented in the video. Loyalty seems very conditional, very transactional in their view. Usefulness trumps everything.
Okay, so the core message we're getting from this source is
yes,
pretty unvarnished. In Trump's world, according to this analysis, usefulness is key, and when it runs out, you might just be cut loose.
That's the picture they paint. A world where strategic value outweighs personal loyalty.
Right. So wrapping up this deep dive, we've touched on Giuliani's apparent fall from grace, his complaints about being ignored, the video's debunking of that anti-Catholic claim.
And the broader warning his situation potentially sends to others. Yeah.
Exactly. Which kind of leaves us, and you listening, with a pretty big question to chew on, doesn't it?
It does. What does this whole situation really tell us about how loyalty and power actually function in these high-stakes political games?
Yeah, when you look at Giuliani's story as presented here, what does it suggest about the potential long-term costs, the price of that kind of intense alignment?
Definitely gives you something to think about regarding how these alliances form, how long they last, and what happens when they break down. Thanks for exploring this with us.